All right, gather round. Maybe turn the lights down a little for this one. I've got a story for you. And it's about a secret that absolutely refused to stay buried. A tale that's really best told in the dark. So in this tiny village near Kolkata, a young woman was laid to rest. And with her, they buried the one thing she loved more than anything in the world. These beautiful silver anklets she always wore when she danced. But see, a story doesn't just end because you put it in the ground. No, sometimes that's exactly where it begins. So let's set the scene. We're going back to around 2005 to a village that really felt like a world of its own. You know, one of those peaceful, sunny places where everybody knows everybody. And we're seeing all of this through the eyes of a young girl named Kavya, whose life was pretty simple, safe, and happy. Kavya lived in this big, bustling family home, just full of warmth. Right next door was a guy named Saurav, a student a bit older who kept to himself. And then Geetanjali arrived. She was the village's brand new bride, and she was just stunning. So full of life, always smiling. She loved to dance, she loved music, and she had this signature scent, the really strong, sharp smell of mustard oil that she always wore in her long hair. And you know how it is in a small village like this. Lives just naturally start to intertwine. Well, it turned out that Geetanjali and her quiet neighbor Saurabh actually shared a passion for the classical arts. They even went to the same local class for music and traditional dance. Just a simple coincidence, right? And then, just as quickly as she had arrived and lit up the whole village, Geetanjali's light just went out. One morning, the news spread like a cold shockwave through the community. Geetanjali was dead. Nobody really knew how. In a place like this, questions weren't always asked. There was no formal investigation, no autopsy, nothing. It was just a quiet, sudden tragedy. So they buried her quickly in the local cemetery. And with her, they buried her dancing anklets. They thought they were burying the story. They were wrong. Because pretty soon, the whispers started. It began with one villager passing the cemetery late at night who swore he saw a woman sitting bolt upright on Geetanjali's fresh grave. A few days later, someone else saw a figure just circling it, going round and round in the dark. The sightings started getting more frequent and a whole lot more aggressive. Soon, the story wasn't just about a sad ghost. It was about a terrifying presence that was actively chasing people away. The village was starting to become afraid of the dark. So, this was no longer some distant rumor you hear about from a friend of a friend. Oh no, she was making her presence known, and her methods, they were getting terrifyingly personal. The real breaking point came in the dead of night. We're talking like 4 a.m. A local milkman was taking a shortcut past the cemetery when he saw her, Geetanjali, just sitting on her own grave. He started pedaling his bike faster, just desperate to get away. But then he heard it, that unmistakable jingle of dancing anklets. The sound was right behind him, keeping pace, getting closer, faster, until it sounded like it was right in his ear. He fell off his bike, his heart literally giving out from the sheer terror of it all. And that's when people started to really connect the dots. These hauntings, they always came with 3 signatures. That overpowering smell of mustard oil, the sound of those specific dancing anklets, and the faint sound of a classical Bengali song. See, these weren't just random spooky signs. This spirit was using everything that defined Geetanjali in life. She wanted to be recognized. Then, on one single night, the entity targeted 2 very specific houses. At Kavya's home, the whole family was startled by this powerful scent of mustard oil just wafting into the house, exactly like it used to when Geetanjali would walk past their home. At the very same time, next door, Saurabh was jolted awake by a woman's voice singing a Bengali song right behind his ear. He whips around, nothing's there. A second later, he feels the sharp, stinging pain of a slap right across his face. Okay, so the spirit's intentions were becoming clearer. This wasn't some random haunting. This was a targeted campaign. And it was all building up to one final, absolutely horrific night. Kavya and her sister were in their room just trying to sleep when they heard it. First, the smell of mustard oil, stronger than it had ever been. Then, the jingle of those anklets and a woman's voice singing softly from their own yard. They were petrified, but they had to know. Kavya's older sister decided they had to look. Fighting every single instinct in her body, she crept over to the window and slowly, so slowly, pushed it open, just peering into the darkness outside.
And there she was, a woman, her back to them, with long, dark, flowing hair. It was Gitanjali. She was in their yard performing this beautiful, silent, classical dance, and she was facing directly at Saurabh's house next door.
Kavya just let out a scream, and the second she did, the figure stopped dancing and whipped around. It was Gitanjali's face, but it was twisted in just pure rage. She charged, full-on charged, at the window. As Kavya's sister slammed it shut, a voice whispered from the other side, clear as day. I was murdered.
Later that exact same night, Kavya's grandmother actually saw the spirit of Gitanjali walk right past their house and just enter Saurabh's home. And after a whole night of just unsettling silence from the house next door, the villagers, fearing the absolute worst, gathered the next morning and they broke his door down.
The scene inside was just a nightmare. Saurabh was dead, lying in the middle of the room. He had been brutalized. His teeth were smashed out, scattered all over the floor. His body was covered in these deep, vicious scratches. But here's the detail that was just impossible. There were these muddy, bloody footprints of a woman all over the floor, up the walls, and yes, even on the ceiling.
And with that, the haunting was over. The violence was done. But the truth was still buried. The terrified villagers called in a holy man, a Baba, to cleanse the village and find out why this terrible, terrible vengeance had been unleashed.
And the holy man, he revealed the whole tragic story. That shared arts class, it had led to a secret affair. Gitanjali had become pregnant with Saurabh's child. But when she told him, he refused to take any responsibility. So to silence her, to get rid of his problem, he poisoned her, making her death look like some sudden illness. Her spirit hadn't come back for random terror, it came back for justice. Her whispers weren't some ghostly curse, they were the literal truth.
After the truth finally came out and the proper rites were performed, Gitanjali's spirit was said to have finally found peace. But her story, man, it leaves this chilling question just hanging in the air. We bury our dead, and we think we bury their secrets with them. But what happens when a secret is just too awful to stay buried? It makes you wonder, doesn't it?